watching Capitol Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
It was a contentious week on Capitol Hill as senators in the Judiciary Committee grilled President Trump's pick for the Supreme Court, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, looking at his background, his resume, his experience, and also badgering him over why documents weren't released to that full committee with enough time to review them for that hearing. One of the senators on that committee, Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois, and he joins us from the Senate studios. I want to ask you about one exchange that you had with Judge Kavanaugh, and you seem to be following or pursuing a very particular line of questioning. At the end of it all, he said, quote, "I can't recall what I said," but you were asking him about his potential involvement in 2005, 2006. He was a lawyer for the Bush White House at the time. There was internal debate about this torture memo or the use of enhanced interrogation at Guantanamo Bay. And I just wonder, what were you driving at? What answer were you looking for?
This is the 7th time that I've faced a Supreme Court nominee, but the rules for this nominee are different. Before, we expected disclosure of documents that told us a lot about the person before us, gave us a chance to review them, ask questions, and take a look at the solid evidence. But in this case, 90% of the documents related to Judge Kavanaugh have been withheld. Members of the committee can't see it, the public can't see it. So when it comes down to his role, when it came to critical issues in the Bush administration, he couldn't remember, and we had no documents to back us up. It's tough to carefully review a nominee under the circumstances.
Given what we heard from then candidate, now President Trump, about the use of torture in detaining terrorists and on the enemy combatants on the battlefield, was that particular issue, the use of torture, front of mind for you as you pursued that line of questioning with Judge Kavanaugh?
I look back after 9/11, and of course we were trying to keep America safe, but we needed people like Senator John McCain to step up and say, wait a minute, there are certain American values we can't violate. I joined John McCain in a bipartisan effort on the floor to pass a torture amendment, and then at the same time that Judge Kavanaugh was working then for President Bush, they had a signing statement that said we're basically going to ignore it. So it was a big issue, an important issue, a moral issue. It's one that applies today. I was trying to make sure that America understands where Judge Kavanaugh is on this important issue.
We also heard a sharp defense from Republican Senator Ben Sasse. He said justice is blind, judges wear robes for this reason, and that when they step onto the bench, they remove themselves from that partisan world where there's so much political infighting. Do you think that's possible with this nominee, or given his vast experience, his broad resume working in the executive branch with the Bush administration, do you think he can do that, or do you think his resume, his partisan background, is disqualifying?
Every Supreme Court nominee promises they'll put aside every experience in life and just look at the case, the facts, the law, and apply the precedent. In other words, the established law on an issue. They all make that promise. The best we can do to ask questions is to find out whether we think it's true. And in this situation, we know that several special interest groups, the Federalist Society, the Heritage Foundation, basically did a background check before they said to the president, these are acceptable names. It ended up Judge Kavanaugh's name was on the list, and we've asked a lot of questions to try to get to the bottom of it.
After what you've heard here, are you any closer to knowing how you'll vote on this nomination?
I'll be announcing it when the time comes before the committee next week. That's when we'll have the actual markup. I thought I owed it to the judge and to the people that I represent to have a fair hearing and a careful review. I think we've had 2 good days and another one to come.
We also heard a particularly pointed line of questioning from Senator Kamala Harris. She was asking Judge Kavanaugh if he had any memory of talking about the Mueller investigation, Special Counsel Bob Mueller, who's investigating President Trump and his associates, and he didn't have an answer for that line of questioning. But just given the cloud that hovers over the president's administration and so many of his associates, during the same week, we're also seeing President Obama be awarded for ethics in government. I wonder how you see that contrast. Of course, you a close ally with President Obama. What do you make of the timing and the contrast of these two issues?
When I was a college student many years ago, I was an intern for Senator Paul Douglas. He was a great senator from Illinois, not that well known today, but the hallmark of his service was ethics and integrity in government, honesty and disclosure. He passed that along to Paul Simon. Paul Simon taught me that lesson. And I will tell you, President Obama, in office for 8 years, did it without any major scandal. That's an amazing statement to be made in light of what we've been through in the first 18 months of the current president.
The stakes are also high here because Judge Kavanaugh has written about executive power, whether a sitting president can be indicted. We heard Senator Kamala Harris also ask a very sharp line of questioning as to whether or not Judge Kavanaugh has discussed the ongoing Mueller investigation into the president with any particular associates. He said he could not recall. But Senator Durbin, I wonder how you look at that, given what we know now about this president under this cloud of investigation. What does that say, or what does that give us? What kind of clarity or hindsight does that give us about how to view President Obama as he's receiving this week, in fact, this award for ethics in government at the University of Illinois?
The money chase in political campaigns is completely out of hand. Unless you are a self-made millionaire or billionaire, members spend so much time begging money from individuals, in this case corporations with Citizens United, and even foreign money, some of which is clearly illegal. That has to come to an end, and it will when the American people are fed up with it enough to say we're only going to elect those who promise and deliver real reform on campaign financing. Until the American people take back the elections, they're going to be owned by the special interest groups and the dark money groups.
In Illinois, we've got a big election coming up, and there's a governor's race. J.B. Pritzker is a candidate. The Democrat that you've endorsed is a candidate who doesn't necessarily need campaign finance contributions because he has enough money of his own. But he has a sprawling network of businesses that are out there. Not all of them are open to us. Should he have to give over his full tax returns, not just the first 3 pages, but the full tax returns to the voting public before the election day?
Well, you know, my position is, and I make complete disclosure on my own side of my assets and liabilities and my income each year. I've done it every single year I've been in public office, and I feel most comfortable doing that. And I think that every politician of both political parties should do the same. And unfortunately, in the president's case, he won't even disclose his tax returns. When it comes to the local races, there have been disclosures. I haven't followed them that closely, to be honest with you. But if they ask me, my position is both parties, full disclosure.
And of course, we saw the news this week that Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel will not be running for re-election in 2019. I wonder what your role will be here. We've seen a lot of big names, Democrats in Illinois from Chicago, who may run in that election. Names like Comptroller Susana Mendoza, Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett, perhaps Congressman Mike Quigley, a whole host of others. Do you have a favorite, and just how do you see your role in who becomes Chicago's next mayor?
Well, Rahm Emanuel called me in the midst of the hearing on Judge Kavanaugh yesterday. I grabbed my cell phone, went out of the committee room, and he said, I'm not going to run again. It came as a complete shock. I didn't expect that at all. And he said, I've just discussed it with my wife, and it's time to move on. The city of Chicago is a great city. I'm honored to represent it. It has many, many challenges, and I've done my best to help. They need a mayor, a man, a woman, someone from the city who can step up and show real leadership to bring the city together and to move it forward. I don't have a favorite candidate at this point, and I trust that there'll be many more names mentioned before it's all over.
All right, Senator Durbin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, too.